Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris back with CAC Knives here. Today we're going to have a knife discussion video talking about some blade steel basics here. There's a few videos I've been wanting to do on kind of basics on knives for more beginners, or if you're not a beginner and you just maybe looking to learn something new, these are going to be the types of videos for you. Today we're just going to be going over simply how knives are assessed in terms of their blade steel compositions. I have, in my opinion, what is 3 levels of blade steel here. They're not actually in the right order, but these are 3 very common blade steels within the knife world. We have a D2 blade, an S35 VN blade, and an M390 blade. Okay, now blade steels are a big factor when it comes to assessing what a knife's value might be. There are a ton of other factors, obviously, not just the blade steel, but it is very important if you're going to be buying a knife in the sense of using it. Buying the right blade steel for the right job is actually probably the most important when deciding what knife to buy. So there are 4 basically topics for each blade steel, and their compositions generally, if they have a strength in something, they're going to be weak in another, and that's kind of how it works. Now, you know, a lot of budget steels tend to be weak in multiple categories, which hence, you know, why they don't cost very much. But the higher end knives, you can't really get everything that you want. You're generally gonna be screwed somewhere, right? What's that old saying, like when you're buying products? It's kind of like that. You can have it cheap, you can have it fast, but it won't be good, you know, etc., etc. You can have 2 of the 3 with blade steels. Generally, you can have 2 or 3 of the 4, but the 4th one is going to be bad. Or they might all be okay. And that's kind of why I pulled these 3 here, because I really want to show you the difference in blade steels, okay? So the first topic, and it's the topic that's been talked about a lot here lately, is the hardness level, or the HRC, or edge retention. They're kind of all in the same category, right? Harder steels stay sharp longer, but generally that also means if they have a high hardness level, then they're going to be difficult to sharpen when they finally do dull out. M390 is insanely popular because of its hardness level, or its edge retention. It scores very high in that category, but it also scores very low in the ease of sharpening category, which is category number 2, right? So there's some give and take there, and that's kind of a foreshadow to the future. But anyway, the next category is toughness. This is literally what it means, how tough the blade is. If you try to pry it, which you shouldn't be doing with knife blades, but I know people do it. Knives are not for prying. That's what a pry bar is for. But anyway, if it hits a hard surface, you know, something you're cutting into, if it has a higher toughness scale than your knife blade, it will chip it, it will crack it, it may even break the blade. Knives with low toughness scores have very weak blades, right? That doesn't mean it's gonna, you know, shatter on a rope or anything like that, but if you're cutting tougher things, you're having a higher chance of doing something to the blade, right? D2 has a lower toughness score. It's not very strong blade steel, you know? So there's one more category, corrosion resistance. And just like toughness, it kind of means what it says. This is the knife's resistance to getting rusted or stained. All knives take these 4 categories and are assessed in each one. Now, I should note there's a disclaimer. With HRC levels, good heat treats can bring HRC levels up. They can make it somewhat more difficult to sharpen if their, HRC level is raised, but it generally doesn't affect the sharpening that much. However, it will help the knife keep an edge longer, right? So let's take these 3 knives here. Generally, this is a low end super steel or a top end medium range steel, however you want. This is S35VN. This is one of the most popular blade steels in general, or at least it used to be. I do believe S45VN has been replacing it, or S40V. I will do video later on showcasing all of the most popular blade steels out there, and I'm not going to do every single blade steel because that video would be over an hour long, but I'm going to do a lot of the most popular ones, and I'll probably show these again in that as well. That way people can generally see which knives are, better for what they want to use it for, right? But in terms of this video, we're comparing these 3. D2, S35VN, and M390. M390 is a super steel, okay? There are multiple super steels, but the most common ones are M390, 20CV, and S90V. That is what I'd say the 3 most popular super steels are. Out of all knives out there, those are the 3 that I've seen the most common. M390, as far as I know, is Chinese super steel. 20CV is made in the United States. S90V, I think, is also made in the United States, but do not hold me to that. But they all have very high numbers in something, generally good numbers in 2 other things, and a low number in 1. For M390, the corrosion resistance rated on a 7 out of 10. Now, I should mention they're always rated out of 10, okay? The toughness scale rated on a 6 out of 10. So it's fairly tough. Pretty much anything 5 or up is pretty decent. Obviously, the higher the better, but so their M390 is very corrosion resistant. It's pretty tough at a 6 out of 10. It is very difficult to sharpen. It gets a 2 out of 10 score. When your M390 blade goes dull, it's going to be more difficult to sharpen. When I say more difficult to sharpen, basically it's going to take you longer to sharpen it. A few, strokes through your sharpener is not going to do it to get a good top tier edge on an M390 blade. You're going to have to work with that edge a little bit. The good news is, though, right when the blade shows up, as long as it's real sharp, considering it has an edge retention or a hardness scale of 9 out of 10, that's awesome. You shouldn't have to sharpen it for a while. Furthermore, M390 isn't found on anything cheap. You will not find M390 for, I don't know if I've even seen it at $100. I think 130 may be the cheapest knife I've ever seen it for. There might be some Amazon knife out there or something like that that has M390 for cheaper. This knife right here that I have on the bottom of the screen, it goes for 160. So now that's actually pretty cheap. This knife's actually an insanely good value because of handle materials that's included, but that's a discussion for another day. M390 is super steel, and it will stay sharp a long time, but once it's time to sharpen it, it's going to take a minute, and that's kind of the downfall. Now, S35VN, the reason it has been so popular and remains a pretty good option for knife companies these days is because listen to these ratings. So it has a corrosion resistance of a 7.5, so it's pretty difficult, even more so difficult than the M390 blade, to rust. And that's awesome. Rust resistance is great. Most people forget to wipe off their knives. They forget they got wet. They forget that their hands might have touched the blade. That will do it, by the way. Now, if you're somebody that oils their knife every month or something like that, or put some good KPL knife shield on there, highly recommend this stuff. If you're somebody that does things like that, then you don't really got to worry about the corrosion resistance as much. But it's always nice having a steel just in general that is corrosion resistant, so you don't got to worry about it as much. And in this case, S35VN is pretty high up there. It's not the most corrosion resistant knife, of course. There are knives that rate 8, 9, and 10 out there, but it's pretty resistant. Its toughness, ease of sharpening, and hardness scales all rank at 5, right in the middle, which is great. Most budget steels will rank at 5 or less, and most mid-range steels, will rank around that range. So basically, S35VN stays sharp for a good while, has decent toughness, so it won't chip too easily, and it's not too difficult to sharpen, but it's also very rust-proof. So it's a very good overall steel, which is why a lot of companies use it, because this is one of the few steels out there that literally get decent bang for your buck in every category, and it's top tier rust proof. So from a company's point of view, S35VN is also less likely to show up with any kind of rust or stains on the blade. So that's a big advantage for them as well, right? Then we come to D2, and here's where you're going to see where budget steels kind of factor in here. Now, D2 is a decent budget steel. There are way worse budget steels out there, like 440A, which I will talk about in a video where I talk about all the steels. But in terms of D2, its corrosion resistance is a 4.5. Now, corrosion resistance is something you probably want it to be at least at a 6, I think, to not have to worry about your knives too much. D2 is prone to rusting. From first-hand experience, I can tell you that. Its toughness is a 3.5. D2 is softer. It will chip easily. I can also tell you that from experience. The ease of sharpening is a 3, which isn't good. That means D2 is kind of rough to sharpen too, compared to other blade steels, that is, right? All these are always comparing 2 out of 10, like I said earlier. The edge retention is at a 5 though, and that is the advantage of D2 as a budget steel, which is why a lot of companies, for years and years and years and years, a lot of the Amazon companies love D2 still to this day. A lot of budget brands were using D2. Pretty much everybody was using D2 there for a while. They're kind of switching over now to ACR 13, or no, what am I saying? They're switching over to a steel that is on my mind, but I can't say it out loud because my mind's running a blank. But anyway, the budget steels are switching to a different steel, and I think that's good. I think it's time to switch over to a better budget steel. However, they are charging a little bit more, so some give and take there, of course. But yeah, is there anything that I missed in terms of, blades? Oh, this is another thing I wanted to talk about real quick. Another thing that affects your knife blade is the finish that's on it, okay? Here we have, these two are basically the same finish, I'm not gonna lie. These two have a stone wash finish. Now, stone wash, blade finishes mostly are there for just kind of scratch and rust protection. So they kind of make the toughness for the rest of the blade go up a little bit, but they make the rust resistance go up a little bit as well. Now, DLC coated blades are very good coatings that help with scratches not showing up on the blade. They help with rust, etc. This has a DLC coated blade, okay? These two have a stone wash finish, and stone wash finishes can help a little bit, with the protecting of the blade, but honestly, their biggest advantage, in my opinion, is that if the blade does get scratched in any way, The stone wash is there. It's hard to even see it, right? There are other, finishes for blades, and we will talk about that in a later video. But that's all I got for today, guys. Let me know if you had anything to add down in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.